What is good, my people? We are live back again with another live show on the forecast. Um, Give the people a second to get up in here. Yeah, I know I haven't done a live in a while. I've been trying to deal with some stuff and personal life or whatever. But we back. I'm not stopping. And YouTube definitely is still hating. But make sure y'all subscribe to the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24. It's in the description. What's going on, Misty? How you doing? I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I'm back. They can't really stop it, even though I know they got a lot of shadow bans on my channel, so they delete all the comments when I respond to y'all comments. I know some of y'all comments don't get through, and but I see some of it just from the notifications. But when I go to check them, they aren't there. So that's just the way YouTube is. But yeah, I definitely want to come on and talk to the people, and I want y'all to call in or whatever. I want to talk to y'all. But anyway, I know the other day everybody noticed, when it was 9/11, how everything and everybody was doing all of these tributes and salutes to 9/11, talking about, remembering history. Don't forget history, right? Now, when we talk about our history now, is always forget about your history. Don't talk about that. That's the past. Leave the past where it is, right? But they understand what they're doing, and that shows us that they understand exactly what they're doing. They understand that in their history, they must remember it so it doesn't repeat itself. We got to understand we're dealing with people who carved murderers, rapists. They carved their faces into sides of mountains and call it a national monument. But if we talk about any of our people from the past, they got to demonize it. You talk about the Haitian Revolution, they got to demonize it because they drove all of the white people off the island. And they didn't even drive all the white people off. They were just successful against one of their heroes who they worship, Napoleon Bonaparte. Well, Napoleon Bonaparte got crushed by a black man. But when it comes to remembering history, it's important for us to remember our history and remember our heroes, right? It's a reason why it has been illegal in America. It has been illegal longer for us to know how to read or write than it is for us to be able to go to public schools. For hundreds of years, for a reason, they forbid us from being able to read and write. Now, there were some slave revolts in the 1700s where people used images like a powerful black leaders conquering nations or defending their own nation to inspire other people to fight back. And when they saw how they were using these images, because they used images the same way, that's why they banned any anti-slavery literature. But when they saw a black man talking about powerful history, even the most liberal white person was not with that. Because when we understand our history, then we'll stop repeating our history over and over and over again. Right? And while they're talking about remember 9/11, we're still talking about remember Breonna Taylor, because she still haven't gotten justice. Right? After 9/11, what did they do? Oh yeah, definitely, Missy. Every day is a good day above ground. You're right about that. But, after 9/11, what did they do? They invaded a whole country, a whole area. Right? They tried to kill George Bush's dad, so they invaded him. And see, they want you to remember that, whether, you have your conspiracy theories or not. But they want you to remember that tragic event. But we can go down the list of all the tragic events that we've been through in America that we need to remember. But we can't even remember what Joe Biden said about us 20 years ago. And even when we were reminded, we still ignore it. But that's because we aren't taught our history like we're supposed to be about, the whole just started from the Reconstruction era, right? About how there were as many riots, and it was really massacres, but as many riots in 1866 and 1865 to 1860s as it was the 1960s, if not more. Because during those times, whole cities were being destroyed. If not hundreds of black people were killed, at least 30 or 40 were killed in many massacres. The Reconstruction period was one of the most bloodiest times. And they always like to say, our ancestors died for the right to vote. Well, no, they were killed. But most importantly, they wanted representation. Not just the right to be able to vote for, who is the better slave master, right? Which slave owner will give them Sundays off or not? No, they wanted to represent themselves. And when you look at the whole Reconstruction era, what they don't tell you is the first black codes were passed before the 13th Amendment was even ratified. And the 13th Amendment, except if you commit a crime, then of course you can be a slave. But we don't learn about all of these massacres that happened in the 1800s, where white people start talking about black supremacy just because black people wanted to be in charge of their own areas. And it wasn't out of hate. It was because they were getting killed. What's going on, brother guy? It wasn't because of hate. They were being murdered. But all of these white people, fearing, and this white fear that goes on throughout generations, fearing that we have the same mindset as them and we'll do the same thing to them as they did to us. But they start saying, black people in these political positions, even if it was in a black town, they start calling it black supremacy. And they said soon that will spread throughout everywhere and black people will take over. So they went in and they just killed everybody and ran the politicians out of town. And if they refused to leave, of course, they were murdered. And they call them, the Redeemer governments. because black people didn't get back into political office for a long time after that. But instead of remembering 9/11, these are the things that we need to start remembering, especially if we want to start talking about voting and voting in America and our history of the right to vote. We need to remember that they still vote every 25 years, whether they should protect our right to vote or not. Because in the 1800s, black men had the right to vote. It's just that would get lynched if they tried. And they're still voting whether they should protect you from getting lynched or not. Right. Like things like the New Orleans massacre in 1866. All of those massacres in 1866. But we don't really know about that. We barely know about the riots in the 1960s. But all of this history keeps repeating itself. But that's because instead of remembering our history, we remember their tragic days. We remember the Titanic. We remember Pearl Harbor. But we don't remember our heroes and our idols. Right? There was a brother in 1900, they called it the Robert Charles riots, and it's the same situation as today, but we don't remember that. We still thinking, hey, now we get it on camera. But this brother and somebody else was just chilling on the porch waiting for, some women because they were about to go on a date. But they were in a white neighborhood. So, they were racially profiled. The white cop said, you don't got no business being over here. But, after they got into an altercation, this brother actually shot back and shot two cops and got away. So, how they respond, they send mobs over there and they start killing up black people until they find this brother. But when somebody told where he was, and they sent, they often deputize, regular white citizens. And we don't understand most of this stuff, like the Casual Killing Act and how it still applies today. And that was passed in the 1600s. And it was definitely in effect in the 1800s and the 1900s. But they sent a white mob of deputized people they armed. But this brother shot it out with all of them and ended up, by the end, he ended up shooting like 27 people or something like that. And he killed like 7 white people before they killed him. Including 4 cops. But we don't, remember that. And we still worry about debating whether we should take a knee, and we got to explain our position. When all of these people were killed, all of these black soldiers were killed after they decided they fought for this country and they've had enough. And, speaking of, politics and, Democrat and Republican and how it ties in with the North and the South. What's going on, Brother Bakari? But, you have instances like the Devil's Punch Bowl because, they love to say how the Civil War was fought to end slavery. Well, the Civil War was fought over tax money they was getting from slavery. The North just wanted in on the tax money, but the South was so greedy, they said no. So they went to war, right? And those good old Union soldiers put all of these black people into these camps in these horrible conditions because, we got to remember the Holocaust and all of that stuff, right? We can't forget about what happened then, but we don't learn about what happened at the Devil's Punch Bowl and how hundreds of thousands of people died just from the conditions alone. And yep, the Robert Charles riot. Yep. And these were the Union soldiers who were supposedly fighting for black people's freedom. But, instead of remembering our history, we can tell you more about what happened during the Holocaust. Even though the Germans were treated better than the black soldiers. But that's because, we don't understand our history. And, anybody can call in anytime y'all want. The number right there on the screen, 804-601-4015. But, we don't understand the amount of carnage they have done to us. Right? Just Red Summer in itself, 1919. They continue to attack us so much. Riots all throughout for different reasons. Right? And it didn't matter if it was black men, women, and children. Yeah, we definitely, remember the Titanic, We know Leonardo DiCaprio, stood on the front of the ship, but we don't know stuff about our history. And we may even know about stuff like Amistad, where we had to say, give us free. Well, we had to go to their courtroom, even though, they were kidnapped victims, they had to go to court to prove that they deserve to be free. But we don't know about people like Madison Washington, right? And how this brother was a hero and how he freed over 100 people, took him back to Africa, got his freedom, went back into slavery to get his wife. But we don't know about stuff like that because we aren't supposed to be taught that. Right? We aren't even, like, we know about, Tulsa, Oklahoma, but even the details and how many people were slaughtered, over 330 some people were killed in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's just what's on record. And there's no telling how many people were killed. And they're still looking for the bodies for these mass graves. Right? There were so many slaughters where, bodies would pop up for weeks and months afterwards. Right? We aren't taught how we are the first and only people who's supposed to be quote unquote citizens of America to be bound by our own government. And not once, but twice. And the fact that so little people know about how the Philadelphia police bombed their own city blocks, even though it was children and everything in there. And that happened in the 80s, not even long ago. What's going on, Slain Nocturnal? But, there's a reason why they control, our history. We should know more about people like Carter G. Woodson, who was big on Black history. We should know, they try to portray people like Ida B. Wells as, just some feminists who stood up, just for women's rights. But she was about Black family. She was a Black activist. Right nowadays, and when we hear a feminist, we get the wrong impression of that. But we don't remember our heroes. Yeah, the Devil's Punch Bowl. They tormented hundreds of people. They forced most of the men that could work to work, while the women and children suffered and starved and died and kept them in their own feces. And this was the Union soldiers that were supposedly freeing them. But we don't remember history, and we tend to fall for the same things over and over. And every time there's a war or something, like you had all of those massacres, all of those black towns destroyed during the 1910s and 1920s. But by the 1940s, they needed black soldiers for the war. Now they still didn't want to arm black soldiers, but America realizes every single time that they can't win a war without arming black people. Now the problem is, we don't understand history and how we were portrayed in the Revolutionary War and every war since then. And not only once, but twice in the Revolutionary War, right? They promised freedom, but then passed the Fugitive Slave Act. And, on the census, it didn't matter how many free black people it said, because so many black people were being kidnapped, including children, especially children, that it wasn't safe for anybody. But, we don't remember these things. And, even when we try to side up with other communities, we don't remember the history of how typically groups that are considered non-white have used us to earn their whiteness. For example, like the Irish, like the Jewish. Most of those race wars, race riots in the early 1800s were Irish immigrants. A lot of them, sometimes it was Italian immigrants. They attacked black men, women, and children simply because they were jealous. And they were jealous because they were slaves, because they couldn't get work. So when people tell you, not all white people own slaves, my family didn't own slaves. Well, most likely they were a part of a race riot killing the free black people or killing, whoever. Because, of course, a slave who had more skills, probably more physically able, and were making less money, of course they were going to get hired. So anytime, a person tells you, not all white people own slaves, my family didn't own slaves, right? They were probably a part of, race riots like the Cincinnati race riot. I think it was the 1820s. It's 1820 something. But, it goes deeper than that, because then you have, just the whole integration. We don't even remember what happened 50 years ago. All we get is images of, them marching on the Selma Bridge. Of course, John Lewis just passed. And, all we know is about Selma. But integration wouldn't have worked without the Black Power movement, which was when Stokely Carmichael started saying, don't get punched in the face, hit them back. Right? They start saying, if you gonna get taken out, at least take one of them out with you. But when you start saying that, now it starts sounding like terrorist act. Now you're the terrorist. But America is still celebrating 19, 20 years later, going into another country, destabilizing their government, and putting in their own leader and calling them the terrorists, whether you believe in the conspiracy theories or not. But we don't even remember like how horribly they were treated just doing these integration riots, right? Like the 6-year-old little black girl, I forget her name, but she was the first and only at the time black girl going to an all-white school integrating it. And how these grown white people, supposedly adults, was standing there spitting on her, cussing her out, calling her nigga, saying you should die, death threats, all of that. And this is just a 6-year-old little girl, Ruby. But we don't remember what was going on during that time. Right? You had the Orangeburg massacre where the police just opened fire on black students who were trying to, integrate a bowling alley. Right now, looking back on it, hindsight is 2020 vision. We shouldn't want to spend our money with somebody who would go that far not to take our money anyway. And that's why we should be careful about who we spend our money with, who we do business with, and all of that stuff. And if we remembered our history, it would be a lot easier for us to understand that. But 3 people were killed, and I believe it's the one where one of them, you know, a young brother that was 17 years old. His mom just worked at the college, and he just happened to be there, going to get something to eat. And just because the police opened up and start shooting on the crowd, he got murdered. And do you think any of the you think any of those cops were ever charged or anything like that? Then you have the Jackson State killings, right? Where the police just open up. You have protesters like you have today, just out there, and they were peacefully protesting, fighting for integration. When the police claimed they saw a sniper or heard a sniper, so they just opened up on the crowd. We have, from Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin, right? But we still got to say, remember Breonna Taylor, remember George Floyd. But what they're telling you is, you know, remember 9/11 so it never happens again. So what are they trying to tell you? They want you to forget your history so they can keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah, that's right. They all benefit from slavery. They all benefit from us being in this position. Now the problem is we think we have friends and we think we can help other people. But right now, we are the ones at the bottom of the totem pole. You can't help nobody else if you're not in the position to help yourself. Well, I mean, if we can remember why we need unity, right? It wasn't long ago. It wasn't even 100 years ago, maybe 70 years ago, where a lynch mob could just go up to the jail just because they feel like it. They can just spread a rumor and say, a black person was disrespectful to a white person, right? Whatever that means. and go up to the jail, and everybody knows what that means. That nigga is getting lynched tonight. Now, if we ain't got the unity and learning from this past, then, it's likely to happen again. And if anybody want to call in, is the number right there, 804-601-4015. Because if not, then it is what it is. I ain't gonna be on here too long if y'all ain't got nothing to say. But I talked about the James Cameron story, right? That's another thing. He was one of the only people to ever survive a lynching, right? But the other two brothers that was with him wasn't so lucky, right? Somebody in the crowd just happened to say, cut him down, I'll vouch for him. And see, that's the thing we don't understand about history. About, they talk about there were slave states and free states. Well, in the free states, that free black people had to get, well, not only pay like $500 they didn't have, or however, whatever fee, they had to actually get the permission of a white person who would be liable for them if something happened. Most of these free states wanted to keep black people from even passing through, just to get to Indian territory or wherever they were going. But when the enemy tells you the history or controls the history, then they can tell it however they want. They can say, segregation, racism, that was only in the deep South. But it's no secret that a lot of people heard Martin Luther King say, Chicago was way worse than the South. And just looking at it, you can't say anywhere, because Alabama is terrible, Florida is terrible, California is terrible, Ohio is terrible, Virginia is terrible, New York is terrible. Everywhere you name, there has been riots and people fighting back against the system. That's why, it's not, I know it's not me, it's just the energy coming through me, right? So many of our ancestors have fought this fight. And if we don't even remember our ancestors' name, their energy, what they did for us, it's difficult for us to keep it going. And our enemy have done a number to us, right? A lot of us can't even remember, maybe our great grandfather's name. So many of us can't definitively tell you where we come from. And I know, a lot of us have theories, but it's a reason why we argue over these kind of things, because they understood how important it is to destroy our history. Because how can a slave know that he was once maybe a king or maybe royalty? And when they were literally taking people who knew they were kings, who were royalty in their countries, they were the ones leading the slave revolts. That's why America started banning the slave trade, right? They'll tell you, out of the goodness of their heart, they banned the slave trade. But it was, a lot of it had to do with the Haitian Revolution. But it wasn't just the Haitian Revolution, because countless revolutions was going on at the same time as the Haitian Revolution. And at the same time, they got so paranoid, they started believing everything was a revolt. Like if something caught on fire, they blamed it on the black person. And they literally lynched little black girls, right? It was something, I think, in New York, the slave conspiracy, I believe it was. But these little girls were lynched because they believed they started a fire. No proof, no evidence, no nothing. Now, if we really knew the history, it'd be like James Baldwin said, to have a little bit of consciousness as a black person in America, right, is to be enraged all the time. Because if we knew our history, we wouldn't stop until we get out of this position. If we were saying, remember Nat Turner instead of remember 9/11, that's saying something completely different. You know, if we say remember Marcus Garvey instead of who they tell us to remember, but this is the reason why we have to study our history, because when you don't know your history, you are likely to repeat it over and over again. And by the way, I want to shout out to Wanda Chavis. And Wanda Chavis always show love, man. She's been showing love for a long time. Much respect to you, sis. But I mean, we can name stuff all day. Right. They definitely they not the thing is they not only kill our leaders, our allies, anybody on our side, they remove them completely from history. Right? They try to remove people like Denmark Vesey completely from history. Right? When Nat Turner did what he did, they said, well, he just went crazy because a white woman denied him, or he just went white woman crazy and just killed all these black people. I mean, all these slave owners. And today, when our leaders speak, what's going on, Antonio? They do the same thing. Or if anybody has any kind of influence, and if they know that they can't influence that person, they're going to take them out. And that doesn't always mean, murder him, but they're going to silence him and remove that person from history and place their figures in history how they want to. Because, we see Adolf Hitler, and we got to say Adolf Hitler was the worst person in history. But we don't really talk about Leopold and how he killed millions and millions of people, maybe 15 million people on record, if not more. Well, I appreciate that, Misty. But we know about Adolf Hitler, and we better not say anything quote unquote anti-Semitic, despite all of their anti-blackness. But of course, people say, they are in a position of power. They can, say and do what they want. But we also have to remember that we are in a position of our own power, right? We just can't be afraid. All right, got the first call. Call from Antonio. Hello.
Hey, what's up, brother?
Yeah, what's going on, Antonio?
Hey, nothing, man. Just call check up on you, see how you doing,
Oh yeah, I appreciate it, bro. I'm good, man. How you?
I'm doing all right, man. What state you in? What city?
I'm in Virginia.
Oh, okay. I'm in Atlanta.
Okay, that's what's up.
Yeah, I'm in Atlanta, man. Down here in Georgia, they have like these 19 families. They bought some land. You heard about that?
I think I heard something about that. I think because Brother Bakari from Georgia too. I think he was telling me something like that.
Yeah, what it is, it's a group of I'm not sure if they're investors, but I know it's like big black families, and they bought some land in Georgia. It's like 19 families, and they're trying to, like the Black Wall Street thing. They're trying to build up something to that similar. So they're trying to have a beginning where it's just only Black people only. But the only thing about that, if you doing it like that, I would think that you would need some type of protection. When you think so, as far as like a police department or something where, because every time we try to do something, that, the opposition always come in and try to destroy it,
Right. I mean, well, yeah, eventually, like how I see it is like when it start getting big, that's when you got to start worrying about it. But like what you have to worry about is like the government. If you try to say, oh yeah, it's only for Black people, the government will try to, you know what I'm saying, like try to do whatever to shut you down. You know what I'm saying? Like now, it's about.
Yeah, that's right. Because I saw the video. The way I found out is because I was watching Willie D. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Willie D, but I was watching his show, and he was talking about it. So I said, let me check into this. And then I checked into it, and I looked at some of the things that they was trying to do. The reason why they had they doing this is because that situation that happened with the guy in Savannah, what's the name, Aubrey, the one that was killed by those two race soldiers.
Yeah, Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah, and that was the reason why they decided to do that, because they wanted to separate themselves, and they just wanted, we just getting fed up with this shit, man. Mm-hmm. Black people just getting fed up with a lot of things that's going on,
Right.
And it's like a continuation. It's like something that's gonna never end.
Right.
It's never gonna end. There's no ending to this. It's like, even with all the publicity, with all the videotapes, with everything that we see, you would think that the cops would try to light up on some of the stuff they doing, but it's like it's getting worse. Right. It's crazy, man. It's crazy, So it's like the other day, I'm just having to turn on the internet. And I see this happened in Atlanta, out in Clayton County. This brother, he was getting beat down by these two polices, man. It just happened like 2 days ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, you saw that, right?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I saw that, John. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He was just only catching a lift to go to his destination. He was sitting in the back seat. The lift driver was driving. He had like a tail light. One of his tail lights was out, so the lift driver got pulled over. It had nothing to do with the brother that was sitting in the back seat of the lift. So they questioned, get information from the driver and everything. And the black guy in the back seat said, I'm just a lift driver. You don't need to see my ID. I'm just, connecting, trying to get to my destination and stuff. He didn't want to show him his ID. And that shit just went left, man.
Yeah.
He almost lost his life for showing public service, for giving his business out to the Lyft drivers. And he almost lost his life over something senseless. Right. Just because these motherfuckers want to harass Black people. And it's like they were looking for something to start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why you see all this uprising, man. That's why I just tell every brother and sister, man, just get your license, gun license, and stock up on food, and even just learning how to fish, because it's gonna come a time where we all gonna be in survival mode. It's gonna come to that point where we all gonna be in survival mode when all hell's gonna break loose. It's just a matter of time. So yeah. I just tell. That's one of the things that they be trying to say, like, as far as us as Black people, we gotta stop selling drugs, man. We gotta try to keep our records clean, because when you get a felony record, you can't go get no license. You can't get gun license. You can't have the right to conceal a weapon. You want to be able to have the right to conceal a weapon, so if you get pulled over by the police or whatever, at least you can show them that you have proof, of your weapon, So it's just important for us to try to just just try to stay away from the negativity, man. You know?
Right, definitely. I agree with you.
Yeah, man. So, but yeah, I have been looking forward to talking to you, man. I haven't seen you on the show in a minute.
Yeah,
I'm like, what podcast it?
yeah, man. I had to take care of some stuff, personal stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm back. I'm good now though.
Yeah, I already know, man. This COVID thing, don't shut down a lot of things. It don't slow down a lot of things that that be going on in our personal life and stuff. So I definitely understand, man. I'm just hoping that our people really can like start getting the memo and just understand that we really basically is in a war, man. We're in a war for humanity, but it's like we don't see that shit because we're so caught up in our everyday life,
Right. Yeah, definitely, bro.
Just being able to trying to survive, just getting up, going to work, coming home, cutting on TV, watching sports, doing other things. A lot of things that's really not important to you. But the most important thing in our lives really is to know what the fuck is really going on. Because when shit really get ready to hit the fan, if you ain't prepared for what's getting ready to happen, you're going to be part of what they call the 2/3, Because everybody ain't going to make it. Everybody ain't going to make it to the end of the light. We already in the dark. And at the end of that tunnel, it's a light that we all got to try to find. And the only way you're going to be able to find that light is that you got to stay grounded, So it's just crazy, man. So,
Yeah, I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. I'm definitely gonna, keep in touch with you and everything. I'll be trying to catch a show and stuff, man. Just wanted to holler. I was the last. You remember me calling you last time?
Yeah, I think I remember. I
forget what it was. I was telling you that we living in the matrix society.
Oh yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me, brother. Yeah. But I'm gonna catch you next time, okay? I'm gonna hold up your show.
Oh, you alright?
And I want to ask you a question. How do I know when the next time you come on? Do you have like a notification or something or anything? How that work?
I don't know. I'm gonna like all I can do is like put up some on my page, like do one of those like post one of those posts saying I'm going live tonight, but they don't really be showing.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So like if you going live, like today is the 13th, and if you going live on the 14th at 8 o'clock, something like that, you'll post it.
Yeah, but YouTube don't usually show it though. I don't know why. I know why, but they don't.
Yeah, man. All right, my brother, man. Like I say, man, just be blessed, man, and stay prosperous, man. And we all gotta just try to stay out of trouble, man. Stop smoking weed. Stop doing the bullshit. Keep your record clean. Keep everything clean. Go get your gun license. That way you can already be protected. You ain't got shit to worry about. And then you already be grounded for what's really getting ready to go down. So, just a shout out to you, man. Just continue doing a good thing, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate it. My brother. Thanks for the call, bro.
Okay, that's what's up, brother.
All right. Yeah. I'm definitely gonna be back more consistent. At least try to do like 2 live shows, and I'm about to try to start working on the next video. And make sure y'all subscribe to the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24. That's where all the old videos you used to go to. I can't post them on this channel no more because YouTube will take down the whole channel. So, make sure y'all subscribe to that. But like the brother was saying, like I know the brother was saying, not everybody's gonna make it, but we've suffered so much bloodshed. Like now we're at a point where we really have to start limiting our casualties, right? And I can't say it's getting worse because it's been like this the whole time, right? And honestly, for the stuff I said on here, I would have got lynched like 60 years ago, 50 years ago, right? And what they're doing and why they're showing it all the time is to send us a message to, show everybody that, murdering Black people is still okay. right? You still have to go through all of this stuff to get somebody prosecuted. But, you know, they have no problem prosecuting cops, black cops, who do that to white people. You know what happened to that cop who got 40 years for killing a little white boy, right? But a little black girl, Aiyana Smith, I believe her name was, 7-year-old girl, sleeping on her parents' sofa, right? And the police raided the spot and ended up shooting and killing her. Nobody charged, right? But what they'll tell you about the story with the young 7-year-old black girl is they'll tell you about how all of these people had warrants, even though they wasn't at the house at all, right? But in the case with the little white boy, what they won't tell you is how his daddy, his Doug daddy, had him in a car chase, right? Because the way they show it, they are normalizing, still normalizing, because it's been normal for hundreds of years, which is literally sick. And this should be reason alone for us to put aside our tribal differences. But it's not just us being murdered, it's us being subject to another group's laws, penalties, rules. Because the reason why they do stuff like how they did that brother doing that traffic stop and they demand their ID no matter what you're doing, right? Because this happened all the time, you know, all the videos that I show these kind of videos all the time. But you know, they really have that arrogance where, you know, you're a nigga, you better do what the hell I tell you to do. So if you say, no, why should I show you my ID? Right? Automatically, that is a crime. Right? And it shouldn't be a crime. And technically, by the letter of the law, it isn't a crime. But you have to ask yourself, are you a citizen? Right? Because another part of history that we aren't taught about is the Dred Scott case. Because they'll tell you, you know, the Dred Scott case was overturned. But what law or court ruling has there ever been to ever overturn the Dred Scott decision? Because there are laws, in even in the Constitution, that said you aren't a human. You're a 3/5 a person. So has there ever been anything to correct that, saying that you are a human? Right? But we don't learn about the Dred Scott case. And you know, recently, you know, a white politician, and they got on him for saying that. But you know, he said the Dred Scott decision is still in effect, and you know, they do these things to send us a message, right, and to instill fear, right? Because it's no different from being on a plantation, right? And it wasn't only they just beat the biggest slave down. What they would do is they would spread them eagle, strip them naked and spread them eagle, and tie him to the ground, and then whip him, and then get another slave to whip him, right? Just to send that message so other black people see a black person whipping a black person. And you know, I know they like to talk about, you know, the homosexual movement, and they try to compare it to the black movement, but a lot of these slave owners were gay, and they would rape the biggest black man in front of everybody, children, women, other men, everybody. And then sometimes they would have another slave, another male slave, do the same thing. And they did this to, you know, rebellious slaves, or just to send a message. And you know, the answer is no, they will never stop. Right? You know, they always tell us, well, we need to go back to Africa. But even if we did go back to Africa, in a few months or a few years, they would be over there trying to kidnap us again. When they realize how much of their culture, how much of everything comes from black people. right? They didn't want to come and take, well, I'm not sure if they wanted to or not, but they tried to build America on their own. See, we aren't taught about the real history. We aren't taught about remembering the real history. Like, they literally tried to use their own to build America or build a colony. But every time they died out about 4 times before they could officially establish the colony. And even then, they were, you know, being cannibals, eating each other, right? And then, the native people, like whoever you say they are, the native people came along and said, it's fish and berries everywhere. Why are y'all sitting here eating each other? Right? And to thank them, they slaughtered them all and call it Thanksgiving. But, it's time to start remembering the truth. Yeah, Philando Castile was killed while he was trying to show his proof. And this Hispanic cop, because we like to say this is black and brown connection, this Hispanic cop did not get charged. Because it's important not to criminalize murdering us. Because, what defines white supremacy is black inferiority. They need black inferiority. Right? And that's why, you try to build a black town, they're going to have an issue. Now, it's places in Portland, that still have clauses that only allow white neighborhoods. Right? That was just on the news like a few weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. How, they still have clauses in their contracts where black families can't buy a house. But they're going to give these black people a problem if they say it's only for black people. Right now, they can use loopholes like they use, but they're still going to have a reason. Now, yeah, you have to be ready to protect your own. Now, what we don't understand about a lot of these riots, and, it's so many I can't even, like, remember which one it was, but mostly in the 1920s and the 1930s, right, when those white mobs was going into the black neighborhoods, they wasn't just going down the street just harming people and nobody was fighting back. Right? The black men who went to war, like World War I, World War II, whatever war was at the time, whatever black men were armed and trained, they organized each other to protect the neighborhood. They set up barriers, right? They were snipers on the roof, right? And so when white people started coming into their neighborhood, when these lynch mobs start coming in, they would start shooting them from the rooftops, and they couldn't see them. They would shoot out the street lights and, use guerrilla warfare tactics. Because, throughout history, all the major revolutions that have been successful on our end seem to have a lot to do with guerrilla warfare tactics. Right? Even, during the Seminole Wars, right? We, get that confused thinking, oh, well, it's like, the Indians that we know of today. But many of the heroes in the Seminole Wars were black people who led guerrilla warfare attacks on U.S. troops. The Seminoles were just, runaway slaves who were down in Florida. Right? But we fight each other over a $20 bill with Andrew Jackson on it. But, Andrew Jackson will say, this is a Negro war we're fighting here. They're trying to re-enslave all of the free Negroes that had escaped. But all of this kind of history is kept from us. And it's kept from us for a reason. And of course, they'll never stop. They'll show up even if we go back to Africa, they'll show up and they'll be ready to try to do the same thing over and over again until we're ready to defend ourselves. But if anybody want to call in, the number is right there on the screen. I'm not gonna be on here too much longer. I'm gonna give y'all a chance to call in. 804-601-4015. But I mean, we can do this history all day. And they're just now making, movies about like Harriet Tubman. But even still, they gotta have, a black man is one of the most evil people in the movies. In the movie. As if, black slave catchers were super common back then. Because, they don't take into account like, oh yeah, well, it wasn't just racism. If you were just a slave, that's what it was. No. Most times they didn't even respect your damn freedom papers. And that's all they're doing today when they stop us. They're saying, niggas, show me your freedom papers. And what you're doing is saying, no, I don't need to show you no freedom papers. I'm a free man. I don't have to show you my freedom papers. But under American law, you're dealing with somebody who can kill you right on the spot and get away with it. And you better hope that is on camera. And it's going to stay that way until we remember our victories, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Man, we got to remember we are the only group to ever pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Every other group in America has gotten some type of benefits, some type of reparations. They have gotten something. And we are the only group to have never gotten anything. Yet we built such successful communities, because it wasn't just Black Wall Street. They didn't accept our money anywhere. So we had to have black towns. And they didn't just destroy it by violence. They passed things like the Highway Act and then built the projects on the side of these highways. They destroyed all of these successful businesses, right? And then took away their ability to make money. And then after destroying their communities where most of their homes were and their businesses, they said, we'll give black women and their children a place to stay, right? We'll even give you food and, even medical care, but you have to keep the black man out of the house. Now, it is easy for us to, judge looking back. And of course, and we could say, I would have never made that decision. And I would say that. But looking at it from a position where, you have newborn children, right? You are in America in 1950. There's no economic opportunities for you. It's easy to say, well, just wait it out and see what you can do, when the system is designed to break up our families this way. Why? So they can still have games like Hit the Nigga Baby, or so they can feed our baby to alligators. Because if we ain't got a strong family, a strong unit, we ain't got a strong neighborhood, we ain't got a strong community, we ain't got no strong nation. And if you don't got a nation or army to back you up, then it ain't nothing you can do about it. But, this is why people like, Patrice Lumumba is taken out. When he started talking about Black Power, he had the audacity to speak out. Right? A brother in the 1800s, the brother David Walker, had an appeal to the colored people around the world. And by the next year, he mysteriously died. They said it was like tuberculosis or some kind of sickness like that. But, everybody around him felt like he was poisoned. Right? We have to start remembering our own heroes. We have to start remembering our past, our history, because if we really understood what they did to us, it is no way we will allow that to keep happening. If we understood the power that we have, we know we could build another Black Wall Street in a few years just by supporting each other. But that's only if we knew our history and not that kind of history that they want to teach us, that they want to tell us. Because, we're dealing with a group that was almost extinct in the 1300s, the 1400s. Right? They had the dark plague or whatever it's called. Right? They compared what's going on today with the coronavirus to that, when all of them were dying off. But you see, they remember their history when all of them dies off. But we don't remember our history to the point where they try to tell us the first slave owner in America was a black man, which is false. If anybody ever tells you that the first slave in America was a man named John Punch, owned by a white person, but they'll tell you like the Irish were slaves too in America, but they were never slaves in America. They were indentured servants, but they were never slaves. They can try to put all of these other groups into our struggle, including, the LGBT movement, even though most of the slave owners were gay. But they try to include them into our movements. And we continue to allow this because we don't know about the history and how that same thing has continued to hurt us over and over, right? Because they're not that creative. What they do is repackage the same thing in a different way over and over and over. That's how they were able to enslave more people before the 13th, or they were able to enslave more people after the 13th Amendment than before, right? With the new Jim Crow, right? We don't even remember what sharecropping was, how they arrested a black person for being poor, like literally for being homeless or just not having enough money. They would arrest them and then arrest their children and then put their children to work. Not only them, but their children. I mean, there's a million reasons why they tell you you need to forget your history. The past is the past. But they ain't saying that when it comes to 9/11. They ain't saying it when it comes to the Holocaust. But Black Wall Street was a Holocaust. Rosewood was a Holocaust. Right? The Atlanta race riot of 1906 was a Holocaust. The Wilmington race riot was a Holocaust. But we have to forget about stuff like that. Right? That goes to show you your enemy knows what they're doing. We don't have to explain racism. We don't have to explain knowing our history. We don't have to explain any of this stuff to them because they are the ones who created it. They understand it better than we do. It's time for us to start understanding it. And we all gotta put a stop to it. And, that's why we gotta understand that we are all we got. But if nobody else got anything to say, Nobody want to call in. I'm about to wrap it up. I should be back in a few days. I'm get to work on the next video. It shouldn't take that long because, you know, as you see, they're showing more and more videos, right? They tried to slow it down with the COVID thing, but, you know, they couldn't last long. And, you know, like I said, they're trying to send us a message, but it's time for us to start controlling our own media, for us to start controlling our own voice, our own history, and telling the truth about our history. It's important for us to educate ourselves and then educate our children, because they understood that, you know, it's easier to enslave a kid who's all they know is slavery than to somebody who has known freedom. But that's why we have to start instilling the energy of freedom into our children. I mean, true freedom, not the freedom to fight for, you know, pieces of paper with their heroes on it that would have killed us, but real freedom. And, you know, before I go, I always say, you know, right now we don't have, we can all be contributing to build our own, you know, platforms like YouTube. You know, of course they're gonna hate and make these channels hard to find, not just mine, but all the channels like these. But we could have all been putting up, creating our own website, and we would have had it up and running by now. We can do it at any time. And on a larger scale, we can take the most successful Black business people and elect them. Especially if we're going to talk about election and who we're going to vote for between two races, not just one, but nominate and elect the most successful Black business people to be in charge of a group to fund and help grow Black businesses, to help them, to help put them in our communities so that we can support them and so that they can hire us. I mean, we can start doing all of these things right now. And once we realize we're all we got and this ain't gonna stop until we do, then we'll be a lot better off. But, you know, as always, man, I appreciate all of y'all coming through. I appreciate all the love y'all showed. Yeah, I gotta go too, Missy. I'm about to go. Man, and I appreciate the call, my brother Antonio, and everybody in the chat. Much love. I'm gonna be back soon. I'm gonna try to you know, post when I'm gonna go live next time. So, but make sure y'all subscribe to this channel. Make sure y'all subscribe to the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24, and I'm gonna keep y'all updated. But as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.